Hello, Jorbs here coming at you with another Spire chat. Today I'm going to talk about Alpha, which turns into Beta, which then turns into Omega, which I think I have to go hunting for, actually. This is a chain both in the card viewer as well as in the game, but I think Omega is in here. Yeah, there you go. So we end up eventually, after we play Alpha and then Beta and then Omega, with a power effect in play that cost us 6 energy total and 3 cards drawn, which says at the end of your turn deal 50 damage to all enemies. Alright, cool. So this is a pretty unique thing, and immediately it might not be obvious when it was right to be using this and when it was wrong. It's a huge amount to invest in, and the return you're getting for that investment is similarly huge. This card deals damage to such a large amount that like one copy of this card is enough to beat almost all of the fights in the game in terms of how much damage you're dealing. And so once it's down, you can like just focus on blocking if you want. You may want a little bit of extra help in like Act 3 and Act 4 boss fights, and maybe in some of the most dangerous giant head fights. I don't know. The way that this deals damage isn't that good against giant head, right? It still takes quite a long time for it to kill it. But in general, yeah, that does a lot. It definitely does a lot. Here's Beta again, which shuffles an Omega into your draw pile and exhausts. And then going back to Alpha. Alpha costs 1 energy and shuffles a Beta into your draw pile. If you look at the upgrade on Alpha, it becomes innate. And so that can solve some of your trouble, because a lot of the trouble is going to be not just drawing Alpha, but also drawing Beta and Omega after you've drawn Alpha. And your deck can misfire if you're trying to do this, because ideally what you'd want would be to draw all of them going through your deck once. But if Beta's like the bottom card, you may reshuffle a new draw pile on the turn where you draw Beta before you can play Beta to shuffle an Omega into your draw pile. So sometimes you don't even just have to go through your deck once, but actually have to go through it twice. And it's not even that unusual for that to happen. Probably, depending on how large your deck is and how much card draw you have, this probably happens maybe 1 in 5 times to 1 in 6 times, something like that. You can be careful about it. You can use Scry and cleverly card draw the right amounts and stuff to try to protect yourself from it, but it's a thing that would happen a decent amount were you not playing around it, and sometimes you're not going to have the ability to play around it, either because you don't get the right cards to do so, or because the fight's just too challenging for you to be playing cards for that thing. And so sometimes it misfires too. But what is it for? Like, what's it good for? What is a 6 energy and 3 cards drawn over several turns power that deals 50 AoE damage good for? The answer in my mind, and where I have used this card to some good effect, is that some decks are very, very, very good at setting up the cards that they have, but the cards that they have don't do enough. If you had a gambling chip and a bag of preparation, and you had an extra energy or even more than 1 extra energy on turn 1, there are a few ways that you could get even more than 1. Like, you could have Lantern plus a Happy Flower that you were consistently lining up to be the right number, or you could have an Ancient Tea Set that gave you an extra 2 after Campfires. You could have a deck which had a tremendous turn 1, and this happens somewhat regularly in this game. The relics that make your turn 1 better make your turn 1 a whole lot better. And so you could have this incredible turn 1, but if you hadn't been offered great cards, maybe all you really end up doing with your turn 1 is like, I don't know, playing a Wallop or something. Like, you don't necessarily get to do really cool things with your turn 1. And having such a turn 1, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, I want to get a Foresight and a Mental Fortress. I want to get a Nirvana in play too. I want to get Study in play. I want to play 2 Talk to the Hands. I want to get a Wave of the Hand down to weaken enemies. And I just listed like 7 uncommons or something. And sometimes you're going to be in runs and you're just not going to be offered those cards. They're uncommon. Generally speaking, the commons that are on offer are not going to be anywhere near as exciting to get to play as you go through this turn 1. And if you're just like not getting enough uncommons that scale you really well, I think that's the moment where alpha really shines. Keep in mind that if you don't play alpha, you don't have to draw beta and omega. And so in the fights where it's not going to work out, you can just not play it and it's not a huge deal. But if you get that deck, which is very explosive on like turn 1 and 2, and you don't get other stuff that you want to do with it, alpha is a really nice little card to pick up if you don't have a better rare on offer, which all of a sudden gives you the ability to be dealing 50 AoE damage at the end of your turn, starting reasonably by turn 3 or even 2 if you get some really solid card draw going on. And so that's when I'm looking for the alpha, beta, omega thing. You can do some really cool stuff with omniscience with it too sometimes. Sometimes you can do some cool things with Volt to make it so your turn 1 like artificially lasts even longer. If you pick up a Volt and you're like looking for something to do with your extra turns, maybe getting the alpha, beta, omega chain played is going to end up being the best thing you can do sometimes. But in general, that's what I think of this card as, is a way to sink a lot of resources into scaling up to be stronger in a fight. And often decks have some other way to do that, but I think this is a really good one that only requires you to pick 1 card. And so really good was maybe the wrong way to say that. I think that this can be a really good one if you have enough ability to put resources into scaling that only requires 1 card. And if you didn't get like 4 cards that end up adding up to a more sensible thing. Because if you like get your Mental Fortress and your Nirvana and your Foresight and stuff and your like water, one thing that's really nice about these is that they are granular. So you only have to put like 2 energy into 2 energy into 2 of them on turn 1 or something, and you get 2 of them down, you can spend 2 energy on other stuff. Whereas alpha, omega, and beta are cards that you have to spend a lot more energy on at very specific times. So it's very awkward sometimes. It's not something that I'm always trying to work. But if I have the right resources available to me and I don't have anything to sink them into, this card's a really, really, really cool thing to be able to do with them. I would compare this a little bit to like if Demon Form or Barricade for Ironclad was just amped way up, like even more than like twice as much investment to get it into play, because you not only need 6 energy, but you also need to draw 3 cards instead of 1. For Ironclad, those are powers which are very, very powerful if you get them in play, but it's hard to justify taking them unless you have a little bit of support to get them played. If you take them at the end of Act 1, and you don't even necessarily have 4 energy yet, and then you like don't have some defensive relics maybe to help protect you on the turn where you're spending 3 energy on them, they can just be really bad cards. And this is like that times 2, sort of. But if you have the stuff to put it into play, can be very, very, very good for you. So that's how I'm thinking about alpha, beta, omega. I hope you enjoyed the chat, and I will see you next time.